Hi everybody, so today I am going to be recording a really long overdue video. I have wanted to share my birth and pregnancy story for the longest time. I'm actually really nervous, you can probably tell in my voice, in my body language. This has been a highly requested video. I also feel like my journey up until this point I've been very transparent with, given the fact I was in hospital for so long last year and I had my baby Atlas, who I will show at the end of this video. He's out on a walk at the minute with his dad. Yeah, I feel like it's only right that I sit down and talk about everything in its entirety as much as I can, as best to my ability, because I've got to say Atlas is 9 months today and a lot of time has passed. Although it feels still very raw and still very fresh, there's so much that my brain has blocked out, and this week a lot has come up for me, just thinking about the timeline, what happened, the events, remembering certain aspects that maybe my brain had blocked out, and yeah, I've been pretty emotional. So yeah, like I say, I will try and remember as much as I can. I hope the timeline pieces together okay. I think I'm going to be doing this video in 2 parts because it is quite a long, extensive story, and I feel like a lot of you have so many questions, and it's only right for me to kind of address and talk about the whole story in its entirety. If you're not 100% sure what I mean by something, by all means comment down below and I'll reply to the best of my ability. But the main reason I want to share this is because I'm realising so many people have had so much trauma during their birth and their pregnancy, and for me, the way I've coped in life throughout some of my struggles has been to connect with you guys, and I know that by me shining light and talking about my story, it gives so many women so much comfort and reassurance. It's also very cathartic for me, even though it's painful and hard at the time. I'm really going to try not to cry, but also it generates that awareness. I feel like women are just so strong, absolute warriors, and mothers, we would do anything for our babies. So yeah, I think I'm just going to jump into it because, you know, I like to tell a long story. I like to give all the details, so grab a cup of tea, grab a biscuit. For those of you who are new here and who have just found me, I'm Beth. I am 35 years old and I had my endo diagnosis when I was 32, and that is pretty late on in my opinion, but I didn't even know what endometriosis was till I was 30. I had my surgery to hopefully help with being able to get pregnant, and unfortunately that didn't really help, and we ended up going down the IVF route. We had 2 rounds of IVF. We were encouraged to go down the IVF route quite quickly because the doctor said my anatomy in my pelvis was quite complex. So I had my endometriosis surgery in July 2022 and I started medication for IVF the following August. Unfortunately, the first round didn't work. We had a little break. I started my next round in December the same year and I become pregnant in February 2024 with my gorgeous baby boy Atlas. Everything was great. I had the normal sickness. Everything was brilliant. I took progesterone up until I was about 16 weeks, which is like, you know, it's just one of those things if your fertility clinic want to give you it or not. We had an amazing, really intimate small gender reveal on Connor's birthday on the 27th of April, where we found out that we were having a boy, and I had that in the back garden just with a few family members. And it was just after that, I was 16 weeks that day, and it does get quite vague, but I can remember starting to feel pain. 2 minutes, because I have got the NHS app so I can see. Yeah, so I was around 17 weeks and I had been to the maternity assessment unit a couple of times. This specific time I had went because I was violently being sick, and I hadn't been sick my whole pregnancy whatsoever. I was really unwell, had a lot of abdominal cramps, was really upset, thought something bad was happening. The maternity assessment unit did all the obs, took a urine sample. I can remember my urine was so dark, it was like Coca-Cola that they sent it off for cultures, and everything was fine. But then I did follow it up and go to my GP because I thought, I just don't know, something's just not sitting right with me. I would say like for like 2 weeks before that, I was having like a lot of pain on my left hand side of my pelvis, a lot of pain like in my lower abdomen, going down into the groin area. And I was really worried that it was my endometriosis, because all of my endometriosis had always been on my left hand side. It had been on my bladder, on my bowel, where kind of my left ovary was stuck to the like uterus and kind of going towards my kidney and all of that kind of stuff. So there was a lot of surgery that was done originally to kind of mobilize everything, and I know that all of it sits on that left hand side. So of course when I'm getting pain, pregnant, getting bigger, I'm thinking, oh my god, is it endometriosis? You're never going to think it's endometriosis, because everybody says endometriosis calms down during pregnancy. So I'm thinking, oh my god, what is this? The GP like reassured me, can't feel anything, I am going to send another urine sample off. I'm going to kind of write obstetrics, because I was obstetrician led because I have a thyroid issue, I have Hashimoto's, and so I was having regular check-ins with the obstetricians, and she wrote to them and said, oh, could her 20-week scan and 20-week appointment just be brought forward a little bit because we've got a few concerns. Everything looks okay, urine sample looks okay, XYZ. So I had my appointment with my obstetric team, and the scan was absolutely beautiful. Atlas was grown perfectly, and they seemed to think that everything was fine. They said, look, sometimes endometriosis can trigger, can flare a little bit, but more often than not it does settle. It could be pelvic girdle pain, it could be ligament pain, it could be all of those things. Don't worry, see how you go. So I kind of just suffered on and kind of just kept going, and the pain was getting worse. And then at one point I thought maybe I've got a UTI, so I dropped a urine sample off at the doctor's for my midwife to check, and you know, that happened once or twice, and I can't remember the timeline, but I'm pretty sure I went into the maternity assessment unit again and they said everything was fine. And then it got to the 24th of June and I was 24 weeks. I went into the maternity assessment unit overnight. I was so unwell. I was in so much pain. I was rocking at the end of this bed, crying to Connor. He just didn't know what to do. I was begging for help. We went in. We eventually seen a consultant. I hadn't took I had tried to stay away from all medications, so I hadn't took anything during my pregnancy, because if you know me, been here for a while, you will know that I do try to live like quite a low toxic life. I don't really like to take medication. I like to do things as naturally as possible. So everything up to this point had been quite a lot anyway, because going through IVF is highly medicated. Of course, give us a baby boy, so that was amazing. But up until I was admitted, I hadn't took anything. I think I took like one paracetamol for a headache. And I can remember that the doctor, he was a registrar actually, got very acquainted with all of the doctors, the registrars and the consultants in the hospital. And he said, right, I'm really concerned, I think you should take this codeine. I freaked out. Little did I know what I had to endure from 24 weeks onwards. I'm worried that it could be like ovary torsion. So that means like where your ovaries actually twisted, and so like sometimes the pregnancy can create that issue. He was like, well, might need to do surgery to have a look. I instantly freaked out. I was hysterical, crying. At this point, my CRP, so my serum reactive protein, which is an inflammation marker, was starting to go quite high. So they admitted me. So I was on the antenatal ward for quite a few days. As soon as I got there and the consultants come on for the day shift, one of the consultants come around and said, do you know that you have group B strep in your urine? And I said, no. And they said, well, the urine sample that you handed in at the start of the month to your midwife was checked in the labs, but you've not had the results back, so you should have been given antibiotics. So we were all up in arms because it can be really detrimental to the baby. But she was like, don't worry, we're going to get you on antibiotics, it's going to be okay. So we thought that's why I had pain. So it was a bit of a relief, but it was also like, I feel like I've been wronged, and I feel like the midwife didn't do a good enough job. And I did take it up with the midwife and also the doctor's surgery, because I just thought, you know, this is, and I know every baby in pregnancy is precious, but you know, I have been through so much. I need these people who I'm trusting in to really step up and also like value my pregnancy the way I do. So I was relieved, but I was still experiencing excruciating debility and pain. And the fact that the GBS was found in my urine means that it had been there for a while, because usually group B strep is found in the vaginal swab rather than the urine. So yeah, I was quite convinced that that could have been why I was having so much pain, but they just wanted to keep me in hospital for longer. A lot of the doctors there were quite alarmed and believed that if it had been treated sooner, my health wouldn't have deteriorated as much. However, we at this point didn't realise there was something else going on. So after a 5-day stay on antenatal, IV antibiotics, oral antibiotics, I was given some antibiotics to take home. I was really pleased to come home because my dietary requirements just weren't catered to very well. I know that sounds really like a minor detail, but when you've been in hospital for like longer than a day, you do need to be eating nourishing food, and honestly, I don't even want to go there with the gluten-free, dairy-free options in hospital, but I felt really weak and I felt even worse when I come out of hospital. So come home on the Friday. Between then and the Wednesday, I had a few trips back and forwards to the maternity assessment unit. I was still on antibiotics. I had an appointment with my midwife in the doctor's surgery, who had no remorse, by the way, and I was becoming just more unwell. So on the Wednesday I was readmitted because my CRP levels were increasing, and they were increasing really quite quickly, and I was showing and displaying just more signs of general unwellness, and that was irrespective of the antibiotics that I had taken just the week prior. So yeah, readmitted and put straight back on IV antibiotics. And the week prior, I had actually been taken down for an MRI scan. I was wheeled down and I actually said I don't want it. I've had an MRI twice before, but not when I was pregnant, and I was just so traumatized thinking I don't want to have to put my baby through that. It's so loud and I don't want it to affect him. And I know magnetic fields and stuff like this, they're proven to be safe for babies, but for me, I don't know, it just didn't sit right with me. But this time I didn't have a choice. I was readmitted and I was practically told, like, we need you to have an MRI. We do not know what's going on. The issue is when you're pregnant, doctors are quite limited. They can't like do certain things or certain scans, but I was convinced that an MRI would be the best option, and hands down it was the worst experience of my life. I cried the whole way through. I was under like this cage thing. The baby was just kicking away and I just felt so guilty. I think that's the biggest thing throughout all of this. I just feel so guilty on Atlas because he was fine. It was me, you know. So anyways, the MRI come back, it was absolutely fine. I am looking down because I've got notes on my phone. Yeah, it come back clear. I felt like we were no further forward. Gynae were involved, gastro were involved, obstetrics. At one point, I even had a doctor consultant from the tropical diseases department at my bedside because they just didn't know what was going on. But after a second opinion with a different radiologist the next day, they realised that there was actually something there, and they couldn't decide whether it was an abscess, an endometrioma, a loop of bowel, but there was something visible. So it was just a really confusing time. I had like doctors, nurses, consultants, microbiologists, radiologists all coming in, asking questions, looking at all my stuff, querying, saying I'm a medical mystery. Obviously, with my anatomy being so complex in my pelvis, nobody really could understand what the hell was going on, and they could see that there was something, but they just couldn't decide what it was. My CRP markers were just going up, which is my inflammation infection marker, but my white blood cells were staying stable, so everybody was just so confused, and so was I. I was at my wit's end. Connor was coming in every day from 8 till 8. I just wanted to go home. I just thought, this pregnancy that I've been absolutely desperate for is like just turning into a nightmare. It was just horrendous, and yeah, I was at a loss. I was. So the microbiologist decided to actually change my antibiotics because they thought, well, the one that you're on isn't touching it, whatever it is. So they give me what they refer to as bleach, ertapenem. And I was just concerned the whole time, like, is this okay for the baby? Is it okay for the baby? But then equally, I was probably at that point 20, I couldn't have been any more than 25, 26 weeks. And I just thought, I just need to get to 30. I need to get to the 30 mark. can't bear the thought of anything bad happening. At this point I was on regular codeine, regular Oromorph. I was having so much pain. I can remember I was screaming at 6 a.m. in the morning with this like excruciating pain, to the point where I have loads of staff run in and like give me all of this medication and help kind of manage the pain. And I realised that my bowel habits were quite all over the place and irregular, and I did say to the midwives and ask the doctor, can you test my stools? I've always had bowel issues. I've had bowel endo, I've had endometriosis shaving off my bowel. You know, I just would like my stool sample to be looked at because it feels like something to do with my bowel. And they were like, not sure, blah blah. They eventually did, sent it off, it come back. I think it was calprotectin in it, but it was like, I was like a carrier, which can make you really unwell. And they were just like, actually it's okay as long as it doesn't turn into the main thing. And I was just like, oh my god, just another thing to contend with. Like, is all of this linked, or is it all different things? I've always looked after my health, I've always been pretty healthy. Like, what the hell is going on here? So yeah, at this point I'd been in hospital around 3 weeks, about 18 nights over the 3 weeks, and I was just fed up. I was fed up of the blood tests, the IV antibiotics, the cannulas, the being poked and prodded, me feeling like I don't trust people because I was worried, like the midwife failed me, what about this, what about that? You start to get your guard up, you start to worry, you start to think, do these people know what they're on about? But to be honest, my obstetric team were amazing. And especially my consultant, like, he just cared so much, and he did the absolute most he could to get everybody involved who needed to be, because he was so worried about me. At this point we just thought the GBS had caused havoc in my body, and yeah, I was allowed to go home at that point. I think around the 16th of July. Yeah, I come home. I was just depleted. I was so tired, exhausted, hungry, weak, in pain. I come home with a bag full of medication. I felt robbed. I just wanted to forget those 3 weeks. The trauma was just like imprinted. Like, I couldn't actually like comprehend what had happened, and I was blaming the midwife for overlooking the GBS, but really I don't even know really how much of an impact that had. Now that I look back, I mean, it's not great, but I just wanted to move on from it. I just felt completely depleted and just devastated, and I just wanted to put it all behind me. I was adamant that I was going to enjoy my pregnancy again, because pregnancy for me was the best time ever, apart from all of that. But up until that point I loved it so much. So fast forward a week. I got a week at home. And this is where it does get really, really confusing for me, because everything just really amped up. Really, really, really amped up a notch at this point. Was taken back into hospital because I was in so much pain. Things are very vague now at this point for me, because so much just happened and it was just crazy. I don't know at what point I was given my own room off the ward, but I was, and Connor was allowed to stay with me because they were so worried. I went on to have 2 more MRIs, which again were equally horrendous. I think, did I have 2 more or 3 more? I think I had 3 more. Connor actually come in with me and held my hand, and I lay in the MRI tube and he held my hand. He was there morning and night. Yeah, whew. It's just so hard to relive this. But yeah, Connor never left my side. He moved in. We were in this tiny room together, on 2 separate beds. They decided that it was an abscess, and it was about 8 centimetres long, wide in mass. I ended up having to get a drain inserted into the area under radiologist guidance, awake. I was basically rushed round to delivery suite because they thought, sorry I'm jumping around a bit, but it's a lot. I was rushed round from antenatal ward to delivery suite because he thought Atlas was coming, and he managed to stabilise me and that's when they involved colorectal. So that's my surgeon who I'm under now. And when I say I had about 10 people in the room, midwives, doctors, consultants, registrars, heads of all sorts, and they were all sat there and they were like, this is really serious, you know, we've got 3 options. We can like do surgery and see what's happening, but there's a risk to the pregnancy. We do nothing and there's like a risk to your life and the baby's life, or we see if we can drain this abscess. And I can just remember me, Connor, and my mum were just like, we just sat and cried. Because no option seemed desirable at that point. And all I can remember saying was, I just need the baby to be okay. That's all I cared about. In the hospital rooms that I was in, there wasn't like mirrors, so I actually couldn't see myself. But when I look back on pictures, I look so poorly, and like I was just deteriorating in front of Connor's eyes, in front of me mum's eyes, in front of the people who bothered, in front of their eyes, because I think a lot of people didn't realise how poorly it was. I went down to get the drain put in and I was so scared, and I was just wired up, cannulas, antibiotics, daily injections of tinzaparin, blood thinning. Honestly, I've got scars everywhere from all of everything, and the radiologist managed to get the drain right where it needed to be, and I was lying there on my bed with my big belly, and they kind of like went in. It was at the bottom of my belly where my pelvis is, and obviously anything you do to impact your body when you're pregnant, there's a risk, and all I was bothered about was like, I hope he's okay, is he going to be okay? And I was just living in fear. I was just in pure fight or flight mode, and I couldn't run, so I had to just keep fighting. Dark, dark, dark days, dark thoughts, moments, feelings, feeling trapped, feeling tired, not being able to sleep. I had that drain in and it just drained so much infection and pus out. It was horrendous. It was horrendous. And from that moment I had that drain in until I gave birth, and I had it in way until a long time. I'm not 100% sure in what order it happened, but I know that I had to have a couple of blood transfusions too, because my hemoglobin levels were so low, and actually I felt so good after that. I think I had the blood transfusion before they put the drain in, because I really didn't want to be tampered with, and I was like, I feel fine. But actually, when they put the drain in and they seen how much stuff was coming out, they were like, this is definitely the right choice, we've made the right decision here. And so that was it. I was stuck with the drain, and it was draining, but then it would stop, and then there was, you know, issues with aspiration, and some of the nurses on antenatal couldn't quite understand how to do it, so then the colorectal team needed to come down, and there was just a lot. There was just so much going on every single day, and my body was just taking more hits every day. My veins were collapsing, my cannulas were failing, more antibiotics were being added to the mix, my legs were bruised from all of the injections. I couldn't sleep because the drain was hanging out of that side, and I could only sleep on one side, and as you know, when you're pregnant you need to move around a bit. And I just cried every single day, because no one knew what was going on. Yes, we knew the abscess was there, but nobody knew why the abscess was there, and nobody knew what was going to happen. I was almost like a ticking time bomb, and I was trapped like that as well. And they were like, you have to stay in, we can give you 1 or 2 days like to go home for like day release, but ultimately you are too volatile to go home, we don't know what's going to happen. just having no conclusive answers or understanding about what was happening was the hardest part. Like, it was always just like, what now? What next? Let's see how you respond to this antibiotic. Let's see how you kind of respond to this. And I was literally just like in survival. Connor was sometimes having to carry us, lift us onto the bed, sometimes clean around my drain. You know, I was like, can you have a look at this poo? Is this normal? Like, you just watched us cry every single day, try to support us, held my bedpan when I needed a wee. Like, it was just my absolute rock. I just felt so scared because no one knew, like, what was the matter with me. While also feeling guilty on Atlas that I was taking Oromorph every day and codeine because the pain was unbearable. Because even when the drain was in and the abscess was becoming drained, the pain of the drain being in there was so painful. The foreign object in your body, and then also feeling robbed of everything. You know, waited and worked so long for this pregnancy, and this is the outcome. I just felt like I was being punished. I think at that point I was like in, and then I kind of got rushed around back to delivery at one point where they thought I was gonna give birth, and my full family had went on holiday. And now looking back, I'm like, wow, that did affect me because I felt really lonely. I felt like on my own, even though Connor was there, but you know, you live for those visits each day because the walls are closing in and you just want to talk about something that's not your health. And I thought, if I go into labour and my family aren't here, and I'm talking about like my family and my auntie and my uncle and all that kind of stuff, and if something bad happens, and there was just so much going on, and managed to stabilise me again. And I can just remember actually having to be on the, oh my god, I was lying on one bed and Connor was lying on another bed in the delivery suite, and he was lying on a bed where you push, bless him. And then it kind of started to have these conversations because I was starting to approach like the end of the 20 weeks, and I might be wrong, I don't think I am, but I'm sure it was around week 29-ish or 30, and my obstetric team plus the colorectal team plus gynae were like, right, let's aim to get to 36 weeks, let's book a C-section in. I was like, absolutely great, yeah. But then I was like, am I gonna have to stay in hospital for another 6 weeks? And they were like, well, you can go home every now and again, but like really we want to monitor you and this, that and the other. And I would cry and be like, my mental health is through the floor, I need to go home. Like, I'm so uncomfortable. Like, I can't explain like the mental pain, the mental torture. I'm typically a really health anxious person anyway, and I typically do overthink things, so this was just like